I'm so excited today to have Dave Pennington on the show. Penn Coaching and Consulting helps business owners and leaders to insert Dave's proprietary strategic scaling framework into their companies to hire, onboard, develop, and retain highly productive employees. Dave has worked in management in three industries: pastoral ministry, private education, and the business world. 8 years ago, he founded Penn Coaching and Consulting and currently serves as the CEO. He has helped accounting, medical, educational, printing, real estate, learning development, and tech clients. He knows how to lead and grow organizations, and he's passionate about developing leaders. He knows what it takes to build and scale a business. He brings his 35 plus years of management experience to the table, leans into his clients' challenges, and comes alongside to help them navigate the waters of business growth. Dave, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, William, for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author, and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
I'd love to start by you sharing some of your story with our listeners, Dave, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. How did you get started?
Well, I probably started more in the pastoral section of my life. Probably did that for the most of my life. And I was pretty much in, I would say, larger, mid-sized to larger, mostly on the larger size. So, people don't recognize it, but if you're a nonprofit, it's really not much different than for-profit. I usually say the difference is if you're for-profit, you're trying to make money. And if you're nonprofit, you're trying to provide a service. But I always tell my nonprofit friends, if you don't run your nonprofit like it is a for-profit, you will not have a nonprofit, and
So true.
yeah. So, leadership is leadership. And
Yeah.
I'm probably more administratively gifted, and that's kind of been my strength really throughout my whole life. So
Yeah.
I've developed people and built teams really all of my life. And that's kind of how I got started. I kind of got pulled into the educational space. I have a terminal degree, and often in my pastoral realm, it was a little bit of a dual role where I was maybe on a staff, and then I was actually the head of school or the administrator of the school. And a few of them were good size. I've actually been the head of school of 5 different schools, and one was 630, one was 650. So when you have 650 students, you got a lot of pieces and parts there, a lot of management, and all of that has just equipped me very well for what I'm doing now in the business sector.
And you get the parent too, right?
I get the parent, yeah. With the school, I always say, you have the educators and the curriculum and facilities and the kids and the discipline and the parent, and you might find this interesting because I have a larger family. I don't know if you even know that, William. I have 7 children myself,
Oh,
4
wow.
boys and 3 girls. And the last school, I was kind of an interim head of school. I'd have young moms come in and they were concerned about different things. And, sometimes they'd come in a little jacked up, I would say, just ready to kind of have me for lunch. And then and usually you don't realize this, but if you're an administrator and you only have girls, then you don't understand boys. And if you only have boys, then you don't understand girls. So I
Right. That's right.
usually would just say, hey, well, let me share you a little bit about my background. And I said, we've been married X number of years. We have 7 children, 4 boys and 3 girls. And I'd tell them a little bit about my kids, and you could just see that they would sort of start to relax.
Yeah.
And then usually before it was all over, I actually often had opportunities to counsel them and help them with their kids because they were coming at it from one perspective and hadn't really thought through the holistic picture of things. So,
That's so
that's
good.
been interesting.
I find so much of leadership is just that. It's helping people to understand different perspectives, because we typically have one way, one view of looking at the world. And what we get to do as leaders is we get to come alongside people and help them see things maybe in a way they've never seen before. You think?
Well, we do. And one of the things that I've learned is, in fact, I teach clients this. Um, we have what I call kind of a default leadership style.
Mm,
We tend
yeah,
to lead others the way we like to be led, which I always say
that's true.
works really well if everybody on your team's exactly like you, which is never the case. And
Right.
so one of the assessments I use with leaders is I use DISC, if you're familiar with
Mhm.
DISC.
Sure.
And one of the ways I use it, in fact, probably one of the more powerful ways that I use it, is I talk about you don't lead everybody the same way. Now, I
Yeah.
tell them you can be a good leader and have one style. And that's usually what happens in most corporations or organizations. Wherever's the alpha
Mhm.
sets the tone, the culture, and everybody adjusts to the alpha. And that will work.
Yes.
But what you're
Right.
doing is you're forcing the whole team, the whole organization to adapt to you. A much more
Mm.
effective way is for you to learn how to lead different people differently. And so,
Mm.
when you, for example, if you're familiar with DISC, if I'm leading a high I,
Mhm. Mhm.
who's a real connector, I'm going to say, "Hey, how you doing today? How was the weekend?" I'm going to chit chat. I'm going to talk about family. I'm going to talk about all kinds of things because a high I likes to connect. And then
Okay.
maybe I'll get down to business. Whereas if I'm leading a high D, which is more of a direct person, I don't chit chat. It's like, "Hey, here's what I need. Here's what I need it by. Got any questions? All right, see you." Because they just want to go get the job done. And so I think of it like hats.
Yeah.
So when I look at one person as I
Mhm.
understand the people that are working for me or working, with me, I put one hat on for one person, different hat on for a different person, and I'm constantly changing my leadership style. And I'm actually
Mhm.
adapting my style to actually fit them so that I can lean in and help them better because I'm
Mm.
not requiring them to adjust to me. And that
Mm.
works really
That's good.
well. In fact, it raises your leadership from one level, I think, a couple notches if you learn how to do that.
That's so good. I think that's helpful for a lot of the people who are listening who are entrepreneurs, who are founders, who started what they're leading. And as they find success, they have to hire other people to help them with fulfillment. And then they have to learn how to lead those people. And I love what you said there, leading everyone. You can't lead everyone as though they're the same because they're not. When you think about the people in this space, entrepreneurs, agency owners, people who are starting something new, when they start, they have to do everything. And I imagine you've encountered this as well. But over time, you have to make a shift. That often is a very difficult shift for leaders to make. Do you see that? And how do you help people to make that shift?
It is difficult because when you begin, you touch everything. I always say
Yeah.
if you're a widget maker, you create the widget, you market the widget, you sell the widget, you package the widget, you ship the widget. I mean, you do everything. But as your
Yeah.
company begins to grow, you can't do everything. Or else
Yeah.
what will happen is you will cap out your company in the sense
Mhm.
that it can't grow beyond what you can handle. One of the ways I've had a lot of success, and this is a little counterintuitive maybe, but
Mhm.
as I work with business owners or entrepreneurs that are developing something, rather than focusing on where they are currently, what they're doing,
Mhm.
what stage of business they are currently, I like to project out of where they're going
Mm.
and help
Yeah.
them envision, okay, when you get this thing fully built out, what's it going to look like? What's your
Mhm.
org chart going to look like? How many people are you going to have on your team? All those kind of things. And so I always say, we want to begin with the end in mind, where we create
Mhm.
that visionary concept of, oh, okay, that's where I'm going.
Mhm.
Then we reverse engineer back to where we are right now. And then what happens is we get a strategy together, a plan, a strategy and a plan, where we begin to build it out piece by piece by piece. And,
Mm.
sometimes what happens and you're in that mid range, you're kind of doing a lot of the work yourself and overseeing
Mhm.
things. And you're thinking, okay, what's the next job I'm going to give away? Okay,
Yeah.
what's the next job I'm going to give away? And
Yeah.
I always say, you want to start with yourself. You want to keep the things that you like doing and you're really good at doing. And you want to give the
Mhm.
things away that you don't like doing that sort of exhaust you. You've learned to do them
Mhm.
adequately, but they'll never be your love and you'll never really get great at them.
Yeah.
Those are the people you want to find first to kind of replace you there. And
Mm.
that'll take a tremendous load off of you and allow your business just to surge ahead.
I think finding the right people is one of the biggest challenges that I hear from clients all the time. Trying to find the right people for their team. Where do you find the right people? Where do you find good people? I hear this all the time, and I imagine you do too. Like, is there a secret sauce here for leaders when they're looking for the right people?
Yeah,
What do you tell clients
I
on
think
this?
the secret sauce is frankly hard work. Um, you know, Most of the time, the reason we don't get the right people is we don't really have clarity about the person we need to hire.
Hmm.
We
Oh,
know we need
wow.
someone. We sort of think we know who we need. I always say we kind of hire from our gut. We find someone we like who might mostly fit the
Yeah.
job, but not exactly fit the job. So we will adjust the job to fit the person rather than finding the person to fit the job. And to find that right person, I think of it like looking through binoculars. You can take the caps
Yeah.
off the binoculars and you're looking, and as you
Mhm.
look, you have to adjust the lens. And as you
Yeah.
adjust the lens, they clear up and you get clarity about what you're trying to look at. I think the same
Yeah.
thing is true with hiring. I force people to actually do written job descriptions that do not just simply
Yes.
include training and maybe expertise and experience, but also that include things like aptitude and maybe even aspirational things they want
Mm.
to, they want to grow, and particularly that whether or not they include culture. Because often what
Mm.
happens, you may find someone who's a heavy hitter, but he doesn't really fit your culture. And if you bring someone in who's a heavy hitter who doesn't fit your culture, doesn't usually work very well.
That's
Sometimes
good
you'll regret
words.
that because that person really needs to fit your culture when you bring them in. So getting clarity, I think, is where you start. If you get clarity, it's a whole lot easier to hit the target. In fact, I liken it
Mm.
sometimes. I don't know if you've ever shot a bow and arrows, but
Mhm.
you put an arrow in the bow and you pull it back, and you're like, where am I going with this thing? You know, you really need to have clarity about the person you want to hire, and then don't settle for second best. I mean,
Yeah.
really go for the person you need that's going to be happy in that job, that's going to do that job well, and that is going to fulfill really what you need.
You talked about culture there. I'd love to dive into that for a second because that's also a topic I'm hearing a lot. So often people hire for competency, right? They may think about a little chemistry with them with the rest of the team if there's good chemistry there, but they're not thinking culture. How do you evaluate and determine if a potential candidate is a good culture fit?
Well, I think you can do some of that through the process. I mean, you ought to have some people on your team, particularly I'll call it your administrative level.
Mhm.
When you're hiring someone, don't you not be the only person who's interviewing that person.
Mhm.
Often everybody has a perspective. And typically, if you get, I'll say, a wider range of insight and input about person, one of the things going to happen, you'll have someone say, "Look, I like this person. I think this person's competent, but I have a little concern that he or she might not fit our culture." Um,
Mhm.
and sometimes it'll be the opposite, which is, I really think he can do a great job, but you know what I love most about him is I think he fits who we are. I
Yeah.
think she fits, our team and our spirit of our team. I was just with a prospect yesterday, and one of the things that they were very concerned about as they grow is to make sure the people they bring on their team are people that fit their culture. And
Mm.
they know who they want, they know who works, and they know who will not work. And often, I think, as a leader, we need to make sure we're listening to others, not just thinking
Mm.
that we've got this. I see what I need. Often, others will give us the input we need to make sure we align the right person for the job, particularly with the culture.
I love bringing other people into that process. I think again, this is something where a lot of founders and entrepreneurs think that they have to be good at everything and they don't need anybody's help. They shouldn't have to need anybody's help, when it comes to hiring. And that's a cute myth to think that you're great at everything. But I think it's just that.
Well, I think you're spot on there because frankly, we don't know it all and we don't see it all.
Yeah.
We have a
Yeah.
perspective, but sometimes our perspective is a little skewed. Maybe a friend recommended this person. We don't want to disappoint our friend. I mean, we have our
Hmm.
biases too. Um,
Yep.
but if and the other thing I think it does is it builds confidence in your team where
Yeah.
you value them and you
Yeah.
appreciate, their input. Now, I know you can't do that with everybody in the organization, but particularly your leadership, because they're the ones
Okay.
often are going to be working with them even more than what you will. And
Yeah.
so you don't want to bring someone in that they're like, I don't know why I brought this guy in. I mean, we could tell you he's not going to work right away. Uh,
Right.
so that collaborative, I think, wisdom that comes from, really allowing them to share honestly their concerns or frankly their positivity about the fact, hey, we think this is a great guy,
So good. We talked about in our previous conversation about a four-step process that you use. And I thought this was so helpful. And when I was capturing this in our conversation, I was thinking, wow, this is so important. Thinking about your team, thinking about developing people. I would love if you would share your 4-step process that you so often walk people through.
Well, we've actually touched on one already, which is the hiring process. So the first
Yeah.
level is the hiring. Now, really, technically, I back up before that because I really start with the leader. And I may have mentioned this earlier, but I find that most small to mid-sized business owners or leaders are what I call player coaches. What I mean by that
Yeah.
is they're playing a major
Yeah.
role on the team. Maybe they're starting shortstop, and they're coaching the team simultaneously. And I think it's very
Mhm.
important that the owner get positioned to really receive the highest ROI, return of investment, on his strengths, his abilities, because
Mm.
he is a
Yeah.
player and he's the coach. And then once that happens, then we're saying, okay, who do you need next? That then leads to the hiring part. And really,
Mhm.
there we want to get into the idea of making sure all, the written job description, including the culture, all the things we just talked about. Next step for me is onboarding. When I
Mhm.
say onboarding, people often laugh because if you've ever worked for other organizations or known other people, corporate, whatever, most organizations have virtually no onboarding process at all. It's like,
Yeah.
here's your computer, there's your cubicle. I hope you make it. I mean, it's almost that brief. Read the office manual. If you have any questions, get back to me. But other than that, and so a new employee comes in, and as a new employee, you're a little nervous
Yeah.
and you really want to do well, but even though you understand the job description and maybe you have experience in that role, you don't understand the new organization, the new culture. You don't know the right
Mhm.
people in some cases, who really are the key shakers and movers and decision makers and all of that. And you have to learn that. So I really encourage owners or leaders, if you're like a leading manager, to actually help a new employee and say, look, hey, we're really glad to have you here. Kind of roll out the red carpet, if you would. We're really
Mhm.
glad to have you here. I mean, we went through X number of applicants for this, and you just rose to the top, and we're just thrilled that you've chosen to join us. And I know this is a new job, and I know you have experience, so I'm not trying to insult you in any way. But I do want I want to share with you in this role, there's about 3 to 5 really key areas that if you do these areas well, you're going to be successful.
Mhm.
And so I want to walk you through those and make sure you understand those because I know when you come in, you're trying to figure all that out. And I don't want you to have to kind of search and hunt and peck and whatever,
Yeah.
because, sometimes that can take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And, it's frustrating. So I want to
Mhm.
set you up for success. And I really believe you're going to be a great, valuable asset to this team.
Hmm.
Now, think about that. If you do that, that's so rare it's
Yeah.
like, the new employee can hardly believe it because you want that person to succeed, and
Yeah.
you're helping him. You're kind of giving him the inside secrets, if you would, right up front.
Yeah.
The next phase for me is what I call development. This is
Okay.
another one I think we have a lot of misconceptions. Most owners or leaders expect their people to sort of develop themselves. Now, I'm
Mm.
not saying that never happens because
That's good.
sometimes you can get someone that, he's going to grow, she's going to grow no matter what happens. She's going to develop no matter what happens because she's just that kind of person. But a lot of times what happens is they will rise to a certain level and then they just kind of flatline. They don't go beyond
Mm.
that because they're not being challenged and they're not being, guided or directed or developed. This is
Mhm.
probably one of the things that I've done best throughout my lifetime is
Mhm.
really lean into people's lives, get to
Mm.
know them. Because you know what, their resume, you know a little bit about their experience. I mean, all the external things, but you don't really know them as a person. I want to know a little bit about their aptitudes. Sometimes I find I may hire someone for a job over here. As I get to know the person, I find out, you know what, he fits really better over here. And I wouldn't have known that if I just didn't lean in a little bit. And then one of the things I'm really
Mhm.
concerned about is what are their aspirations? Where do they want to go in their lives? What do they want to do in
Yeah.
their lives?
Yeah.
So often, when you work for an organization, I call it a win-lose situation. The company
Mhm.
wins, and as an employee, I lose. Uh,
Mm.
that's not a very motivating place to be in. You want to set up a win-win. And frankly, if you help the employee win, in other words, you lean into him, you learn about him, You learn about his aspirations. You're willing to invest resources, money, time, what energy, whatever is needed, and really help that person, I'll say, grow to the top of his game. What happens is when the employee wins, guess what? The company wins also.
Yeah.
And when you invest in people and
That's
you
good.
really care for them and you want to see them grow, I think they work a little bit harder. But here's what really happens. You create a stickiness within your company because
Mhm.
that's so rare and so unusual to have a boss who really genuinely cares for you and wants you to succeed and
Yeah.
is going to do everything he can to help you succeed. It's so rare. It's like, it's like, why would I ever want to leave here? I mean, I've got it made. This guy really actually wants to help me.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
that leads to my fourth area, which is retention. And I always find it funny that most business owners think people leave because of money or lack of money. In other words, I can't pay them enough. That's not usually why they leave. They leave because they don't feel valued or appreciated. There's no opportunity for growth for them, or
Mhm.
frankly, just poor management. And so what you want to do is you want to get the right people on your team and get them in the right on the right bus, in the right seat, all of that. But then you want to actually develop them, and then you want to retain them. You want to keep them. I mean, you've worked really
Yes.
hard to get them there and develop them, so you want to keep them. And I get it. Sometimes you'll lose some, okay? In
Yeah.
other words, they get this opportunity, but here's the way it will typically work. They'll come to you and say, look, I knew that this day would come one day, and I've kind of dreaded this. But they'll say, I've got this opportunity. I just feel like I need to take for my family's sake or whatever. It's just too good to turn down. But then they'll go on to say, I just want you to know I so appreciate all the investment that you have made in me. In fact, probably if it were not for you, I wouldn't have had this opportunity to even take this job. And I am just so thankful for all that you've done. And then here's what will happen. Once they leave you, they will actually start sending you people to replace them. And often they send you really good people because they're so appreciative. It's kind of a principle of reciprocity. They're so
Yeah.
appreciative of all that you've done for them. They want to help you. And if I'm going to lose someone, I don't mind losing them that way. That's a decent way to lose people if I need to lose someone. So those are the 4 steps. Hiring, onboarding, developing, and then retaining.
You know what I love about that, Dave, is the intentionality of it is so purposeful. There's no step at which you can kind of drift through it. You got to be super intentional on this. And the team member centric approach to it. You're thinking about them throughout that whole process. You're thinking about how they're going to fit, how they're going to develop, how they're going to grow, how they're going to succeed. I love that. I think that's such a fantastic model that every leader can learn from. When people feel valued, they lean in. When they
Mhm.
feel like that you're for them, they lean in, and they're not going to run down the street at the first opportunity.
It's
I think
it's
this model is so
flipping
good.
things, on the way it's opposite of the way the norm things. I had a conversation. I think it was another podcast I was on, and I was talking to this lady. She's up in years now a little bit, and she was talking about when she was in corporate, she was in sales, and apparently she did really well. And you know how you have competitions in sales, and you get these
Mhm.
big trips.
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
you're going to Hawaii or wherever. And she said, the people that were running the organization just didn't get it. She said, I had little kids and I had
mhm.
to have my kids it cost me more to go on that trip. They could have just given me the money. I would have been happier. But
Yeah,
that's a perfect example of someone setting something up based upon what maybe they would desire versus really what would be a help to the employee. And just thinking, I'll call it more employee centric or team member. I like that
yeah,
phrase better. Team member centric versus company centric.
yeah,
And that's a small little pivot,
yeah.
but man, it's a huge pivot. And I think it's often what
So
is
good.
missing within organizations because people often feel like they're just a number. Uh,
Yeah.
they're just a contributor. They don't feel like there's much for them in the whole process. It's all about the company, about the organization, and that's not real motivating for most people.
Dave, I want to talk about you for a minute. How do you stay on top of your game as a leader? How do you level up with the leadership skills that you're going to need 5 years from now, 2 years from now, 1 year from now? How do you continue to develop so that your team will see you and benefit from you being the leader that you're going to need to be?
it's a couple things here. One of the things is I'm a learner. Okay, I'm a big avid reader. I'm always
Yeah.
reading and learning and trying to up my skills. I think one of the things you can do as a leader, if you're not careful, is you can get comfortable. I've kind of got
Yes.
I've climbed the top of the mountain. I'm at the top of the mountain. I'm good. No, not really. You
Yes.
you always got room to grow, and frankly, if you're not growing, you're digressing. If you're not moving
Yes.
forward, you're moving backwards. So I think having a heart to learn and grow, be teachable yourself is really, really
Yes.
key. But for me, one of the things I try to do is I try to limit what I do to really work in my strengths. And the
Nice.
reason I do that is because if I'm working in my strengths, it's not hard for me. It's actually easy for me.
Yeah.
And it's almost effortless at times.
Yeah.
And then I farm out things. Now, sometimes it's to someone I have on my staff. Sometimes it's a contractual thing. Like I have a bookkeeper and a CPA and all that. I don't do all that stuff. Could I do it?
Yeah.
Yes. But it wouldn't be a good use of my time. And so
Right.
I want to farm out things that I don't really need to be doing. Same
Mhm.
thing with the marketing. I'll be involved to some extent, but I'm not going to be doing it all because it's not my strength, and it takes a lot of time. So, now you can't do all that at first. You have to kind of gradually,
Right.
begin to give things away. But I
Yeah.
always want to have enough space where I can continue to grow as a leader, and I'm not just maxed out all the time.
Yeah.
Most leaders, if they're honest, they kind of run on fumes.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard to go very far on fumes. You really need to back off a little bit and really make sure you're not just busy doing things, but you're doing the right things. And
Yes.
that makes a huge difference. Do less, but do what you do better. And I think that helps you stay in the game. It helps you grow, and it keeps you from getting overloaded and just burning yourself out. And I see a lot of leaders doing that as well.
As you continually learn and grow, I imagine, like most of the people that I talk to, you're learning from a lot of different people. Is there a book that has made a big difference in your journey that you would recommend to the leaders who are listening?
You're making it hard for me here, William. One book. Um,
All
uh,
right, if you have to, you can have two.
no, I'll tell you one. I'll tell you one I recommend a lot, and it's called Rocket Fuel. It's a
Yes.
Gino Wickman book, if you're familiar with Gino Wickman,
Yes, EOS.
traction
Yeah.
world. Okay.
Yeah.
And the essence of the book is this: they studied companies, corporations that were successful, and in every case there was a visionary, someone who
Yeah.
was creative, had the ideas, a vision of where the company could go, and there was what he calls an integrator, an
Yeah.
operational person. And the idea is when they play nicely together in the sandbox
Yeah.
and stay in their lanes, which is sounds easy, but not always that easy. They stay in
Mhm.
their lanes, and the combination of the visionary and the integrator become quote unquote like rocket fuel, and the company
Yeah.
just takes off. And a lot of companies are started by visionaries.
Yeah.
And the visionary can take it so far, but visionaries are not integrators. If you want to
Mhm.
take it to the next level, you need to get an integrator who can take care of a lot of the day to day, the operational things, the personnel, all those things that tend to wear you out if that's not your sweet spot. And so that then you can really get to the next level.
That's so good. Love that. Dave, as you think forward to the next 10, 15, 20 years, what do you want your legacy to look like?
To me, it's all about impacting leaders.
Mhm.
Um, what I call it the pebble in the pond concept.
Mhm.
If you throw a pebble in a pond, there's a ripple effect. And if I can
Yeah.
impact the leader, it impacts everyone in that organization. I
Yeah.
like to write, so I envision myself doing some writing here in the future. I have a strong teaching background. I'm an adjunct professor, so I also see myself doing some course development. I've got a couple I'm working on right now. One in
Awesome.
time management. In fact, I've called it time management for busy executives, and
Mm,
it's really
nice.
principles that I have used and that I've used with my clients that sort of simplify time management. What I find, with a lot of the gurus, I mean, they're very competent and capable in terms of what they do, but their systems are complex,
Mhm.
and you almost have to adopt the whole system or it won't work.
Yeah.
I work off of more concepts and principles,
Mhm.
and really simplicity, I think, is the key, because here's what I found:
Yeah.
if it's too complicated, people just won't do it.
That's
And it
right.
doesn't matter how good it is. If they don't do it, they don't get any benefit. So simple
That's right.
ways that are practical, really, I mean, that's just and I like to take complex things and make them really simple, clear, and easy to execute. So I kind of
Mm,
see me staying in this leadership space, development space, and doing some writing, additional writing, and some course creation in the future.
mm,
And hopefully that will allow me to, to have a legacy and impact for the future as well.
it's fantastic. Often people will leave an episode like this with one big idea, one big takeaway. If you could define that takeaway, Dave, what would you want that to be?
I would say if you really want to grow and you want to be successful with your company or organization, then lean in and make it about your people.
Hmm.
The most valuable commodity you have as a leader is your time. You can't get more time. Doesn't matter how much money you make. Doesn't matter where you are on the ladder. You have limited amount of time. You can't get more time. Now you can use it better. I get that, but you can't get more. And then the
Yeah.
second thing that they think is the most valuable is money. But actually,
Mm,
money is not the second most valuable commodity. Second most valuable actually are your people.
yeah.
Because if you have the right people, you can always make more money. You can always grow your
So
organization.
good.
On this, look, if you really make it about your people, you're not going to go
Yeah.
wrong in that. They will view that as, hey, you know what? He believes in me. He trusts in me. I value, I really appreciate who he is, what he's done, and his investment, and I really want to contribute. I really want to help make this company successful, and it
Yeah.
just pays off, in dividends. But you're not doing it to get; you're actually doing it to give. And I think
Mm,
people have a pretty good barometer. They know when you're really contributing, and they know when you're really kind of trying to get back. Um, and I
that's
think if you
good.
just really look at giving, and they sense that you care about them, that makes a huge difference.
Mm, that's so good. It's about the heart. It's about the mindset that you approach with. I love that.
Yeah.
I know people are going to want to stay connected to you, Dave, and continue to learn from you. What is the best way for them to do that?
Probably a couple ways. I obviously I have I'm on LinkedIn, so that's a good way to kind of learn a little bit about me. I have a website. It's Penn Coaching, PENN coaching.com. A lot of little videos, ebooks, blogs, all kinds of stuff on there. You can kind of learn a little bit about me there. If you really want to just even lean in more, there's a toggle there where you can set up a consultant call. It's a no obligation call where we just kind of get to know each other, have a conversation. No pressure. I don't pressure
Hmm.
people. But the idea is, I learn about your company and really try to view hey, can I help you? If I can help you, I share a little bit about how I would help you, how I would go about it. And, if it works for you, and frankly, it has to work for me. I've been at this long enough to know that not every prospect is a good client. And even if they're willing to pay you, that's not necessarily a reason to take them on as a client. It's got to work both ways. Okay.
Yeah.
But if I can help you, I'd love to help you. And if I can't, usually I know someone that can. I can refer you out to someone and say,
Mm,
that's not really my sweet spot, but I know a guy or I know a gal, and I can connect you there of someone that can help you. And frankly, I'm just really also what I shared. I'm all about people. So
yeah.
I love to help people. Sometimes I'll just give them some free advice, and it can be insightful and helpful. And we move on. We stay friends. They're not quite ready to engage yet, but maybe we stay in touch, and down the road they engage. Or maybe they learn about me and they send a friend to me that
Mm,
that I can help. So it kind of works that way.
love that. It's a very generous way of thinking about the world and about business there, Dave. I think that's a great model for us all.
Well, it works, and I think people, once again, if they sense your sincerity, um, people like to help people.
Yeah.
And they like to both give and receive. And when you come at it with kind of a wholehearted spirit, I think they sense that, and it just connects you really at the heart.
Mm. I'm so grateful, Dave, for your generosity today in sharing so freely from your own journey and what you've shared for the benefit of other people. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, William. It's been great to be with you.
Thanks for joining me for this episode today. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do two things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, if you don't have a copy of my newest book, Catalytic Leadership, I'd love to put a copy in your hands. If you go to catalyticleadershipbook.com, you can get a copy for free. Just pay the shipping so I can get it to you, and we'll get one right out. My goal is to put this into the hands of as many leaders as possible. This book captures principles that I've learned in 20 plus years of coaching leaders in the entrepreneurial space, in business, government, nonprofits, education, and the local church. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take a next step with a coach to help you intentionally grow and thrive as a leader, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to catalyticleadership.net to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, leaders, choose to be catalytic.
Thanks for listening to Catalytic Leadership with Dr. William Attaway. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode. Want more? Go to catalyticleadership.net.